Let's get a divorce. Ethan's voice rang out, cold as ice. He stood there under the blazing sunset, his face showing no trace of emotion, as if 3 years of marriage, 3 years of my wholehearted devotion, had been nothing but a fleeting dream, not worth a backward glance. But he didn't know that I, Emily, had been reborn. In my previous life, I foolishly believed his words and signed the fake divorce papers he handed me. He said it was for me and our daughter, for a better home, for temporary privileges he granted. I believed him. I sacrificed. I risked my life to pull him back from the brink of death. I sold my family's heirloom bracelet to save his life. And in return, I got one cold sentence. We were already divorced. He held the hand of his first love and walked right past me, leaving me and my daughter in shame and agony. But this time, everything would be different. I looked straight into Ethan's eyes, the corner of my mouth lifting in a bitter smile. Fine, Ethan. Divorce it is. My tone was calm, but inside a fire raged. This wasn't surrender, it was a declaration of war. Ethan, in this life, I will never let you turn me into a laughingstock again. When we walked out of the military compound, Ethan's strides were quick, with no thought of waiting for me. I carried my daughter in my arms, following behind, feeling like something unnecessary. The familiar setting, the familiar man. Everything was exactly the same as my previous life. The harsh sunlight stung my eyes and I lowered my head. Mom, my daughter asked softly, sweetly, why is Dad walking so fast? I stroked her hair and answered gently, Daddy has something urgent to do. Let's not bother him, okay? Ethan's steps faltered for just a moment, but he didn't turn around. I knew he had heard, but he didn't care. In my past life, I had held my daughter just like this, anxiously trailing behind him. Back then, I was still naive, thinking Ethan was just bad at expressing his feelings, believing that in his heart he still cared for us. Until the day he brought her, Samantha, the beauty of the performing troupe, into my world. That was when I realized just how wrong I had been. Nestled in Ethan's arms, Samantha looked at me with a sweet, affected smile. Sister-in-law. Oh no, I guess I should call you comrade now. Thank you for giving Ethan up to me. From start to finish, Ethan didn't look at me once. He only left me with one cold, indifferent sentence. We're already divorced. Don't bother me again. Bother him. I had given him the best years of my youth, poured every ounce of my love into him, and in the end, I was branded a nuisance. How laughable. And how pitiful. At the Civil Affairs office, the clerk asked, Do you two confirm you want a divorce? Ethan pulled 2 packs of Dakshianmen cigarettes from his pocket and handed them over, speaking in a tone that showed familiarity. Yes, we voluntarily agree to divorce. Clearly the clerk knew him, because he accepted the cigarettes and quickly finished the paperwork for us. The moment I held the divorce certificate in my hand, I noticed the corner of Ethan's lips curve faintly, almost a smile. He thought he was finally free, that he could now openly stand beside the first love of his dreams. I smiled as well. I lifted my head, meeting Ethan's probing gaze, and enunciated each word clearly. Congratulations, Captain Ethan. You got what you wanted. For once, Ethan froze. Perhaps he hadn't expected me to be this calm. In the past, even a trace of coldness from him would have me in tears, making scenes that never ended. But today I didn't cry, and I didn't make a fuss. I even smiled at him. Ethan's brows furrowed as if displeased. What do you mean? He asked. Holding my daughter close, I stepped back. I widened the distance between us. There was no hidden meaning. It was exactly what I said. Calmly, I told him, Captain Ethan, we're divorced now. From here on, we go our separate ways. The river and the well don't interfere with each other. I wish you a bright future, and I ask that you don't come to disturb the lives of me and my daughter again. Without another glance at him, I turned and carried my daughter away. Behind me came Ethan's startled voice. Where are you going? I didn't turn back. I only waved my hand lightly. Where? Somewhere without you, where I can start my new life. Ethan, in this lifetime I will never love you again. Stay with your white moonlight and live out the rest of your days. My daughter, Lily, nestled her head into my shoulder, her tiny hand clutching the hem of my blouse. Mom, aren't we going home with Dad anymore? My heart tightened. I kissed her forehead gently and whispered, Lily, sweetheart, we'll go to a new home, a place with just you and me. Holding my daughter, I didn't look back. I headed straight for the row of parked cars. In my last life, after the divorce papers were finalized, I had nowhere to go. It was Ethan who, with eyes full of condescension, arranged for me and my child to live in a damp, dark storage room in the military family housing compound. He had said, "Just make do for now. Once we're assigned a new house, you can move in." I endured it for the sake of that vague promise. I endured the neighbors' whispers. I endured the damp that made Lily fall sick. But reborn into this life, I would never be so foolish again. Just as I thought this, a military jeep screeched to a halt beside me. The door swung open, and Ethan, his face dark as stone, stepped out and seized my arm. "Haven't you had enough?" His voice was low and sharp with irritation. "Isn't this what you wanted? Get in the car, I'll take you home." Home? To that cold, lifeless house that was never truly mine? Or back to the rotten storage room he once tossed me into like alms? I yanked my arm free and glared at him, my eyes icy. "Captain Ethan, have some self-respect. We're divorced now. By what right do you lay hands on me?" The words "Captain Ethan" made his eyes flicker with something dangerous. He had grown used to me calling him softly by his name, Ethan. Clearly he couldn't adapt to this change. "Emily, don't push your luck," he ground out, his voice dropping even lower, as if afraid passers-by might hear. "The divorce was just for show. Did you forget it was for the house?" I didn't forget. I met his gaze squarely, each word firm and distinct. "But I regret it now. I don't need that house, and I don't need you either. This marriage is over. Divorce means divorce. From now on, you walk your path, and I'll cross my own bridge." Ethan's eyes widened with disbelief. His brows furrowed tightly as he stared at me, as if searching for a crack in my composure. "You're not like this," he muttered. I couldn't tell if he was speaking to me or denying himself. In his eyes, Emily was supposed to be obedient, docile, never resisting, never meeting him with this cold, distant gaze. I curled my lips into a mocking smile. "People change. You're the one who taught me that." Ethan's expression faltered, perhaps recalling Samantha, perhaps afraid of what I carried in my heart. Lily whimpered softly against my shoulder, frightened by the tense atmosphere. I patted her back gently and soothed her. "Don't be scared, Lily. Mommy's here." I turned, ready to leave, but Ethan once again blocked my way. Ethan's patience had completely run out. "You just want to make a scene, don't you? Fine, I'll let you make a scene. But first you're coming back to the family housing with me. A regimental commander's wife, freshly divorced and wandering the streets. What kind of disgrace is that?" "I'm your ex-wife," I replied coolly. "What people think is their business. It has nothing to do with me, and even less to do with you." "Or are you worried that your confidant might see this and misunderstand?" Ethan's face shifted from pale to livid, a mixture of fury and confusion. He couldn't understand why I had changed so suddenly. All the better. Let him guess. Let him taste the same bewilderment and helplessness I once endured. "Get in the car." He finally lost all patience and roared, raising his hand to grab me. Just then, a voice rang out. "Well, isn't this Comrade Emily? What a coincidence." Both Ethan and I turned our heads at the same time. A man in a worn but neatly pressed cadre uniform approached with a smile. It was Mark Harris, the neighborhood committee director. In my previous life, we had no connection. But in this life, he was destined to be my benefactor. Mark's gaze swept over Ethan's hand clutching my arm, and his smile faltered slightly. "Captain Ethan, what's going on here?" As if burned, Ethan instantly released me, his face stiff. "Nothing." I seized the moment, stepping quickly toward Mark and offering him a grateful smile. "Director Harris, this is perfect timing. I was just about to find you. My daughter and I need a temporary residence permit. Could you help us with that?" Mark blinked, taken aback for a second, then quickly recovered. "Of course, that's my duty. But you and Captain Ethan..." I lowered my eyes, letting sorrow show plainly on my face. "We just got divorced." Mark's gentle smile froze halfway. He looked at me, then at Ethan, his expression filled with astonishment. As a neighborhood director, he had seen every kind of domestic dispute, but a divorce involving a regimental commander, this was a scandal. "Divorced?" he repeated, clearly unwilling to believe it. He turned to Ethan. "Captain Ethan, you can't be serious." Before I could speak, Ethan rushed to answer. Forcing a strained smile uglier than tears, he said, "Director Harris, you've misunderstood. My wife, no, my ex-wife, she's just upset. It's just a husband and wife quarrel." He was still clinging to his act, trying to maintain the perfect facade he had worn for years, convinced that one lie could erase everything, as though nothing had happened. His eyes darted toward me, sharp with warning, signaling me to play along. In my past life, a single look like that would have been enough to make me lower my head, admit fault, and obediently follow him back into that cocoon of lies he had spun around me. But in this life, all I felt was cold disgust. I tightened my hold on Lily, turned my gaze to Mark, and spoke with just the right tremor of hurt and grievance in my voice. Director Harris, it's not a quarrel. I still have the divorce papers in my pocket. We just had them stamped. He says I'm upset only because I refused to live in the damp, moldy storage room he arranged for us after the divorce. I lowered my voice further, my eyes dropping to the innocent little face sleeping in my arms. Lily is still so young and her health is fragile. I couldn't let my daughter live in such misery. Every word I spoke was aimed straight at the heart. I was no longer the weak and submissive Emily I had been in my past life. I understood now that in this era, public opinion was a weapon. A decorated soldier, fresh from a divorce, throwing his wife and child into a damp storage room. If that image spread, it would be enough to make Ethan lose face completely. Sure enough, Mark Harris's expression darkened. He was a man of integrity, and the sharp dissatisfaction in his gaze was obvious as he looked at Ethan. Captain Ethan, is what Comrade Emily said true? Ethan's face turned ashen. I had driven him into a corner. He couldn't admit it. If he did, his reputation would collapse. But he also couldn't deny it entirely, because I stood right there as a living witness. That was only temporary, he stammered, his usual composure scattered to the wind. I was waiting until we were assigned a new house. Then I let out a quiet laugh tinged with mockery. Director Harris, perhaps you don't know, this divorce was actually proposed by Captain Ethan himself. He said it would be a fake divorce so that we could qualify as a difficult family and get a bigger, better house more easily. But once the divorce is done, who can say who the house will truly belong to? I didn't mention Samantha, it wasn't time for that yet, but I had already planted the seed of suspicion. Mark Harris wasn't a fool. He immediately caught the deeper meaning in my words. His look of mere dissatisfaction hardened into open contempt, unhidden as he turned to Ethan. Captain Ethan, he said coldly, dropping even the courtesy of formality. You're a soldier. How could you do such a thing? This is exploiting loopholes in policy. It's irresponsibility toward your wife and child. Ethan's face flushed scarlet, burning hot. He was a proud man, a rising star in the military. He had never been scolded so directly, so publicly. He choked on his words, unable to respond, glaring at me instead, his eyes as if he wanted to devour me whole. But I wasn't afraid. I met his gaze head-on, and inside me rose a rush of satisfaction. Ethan, this is only the beginning. The humiliation you're feeling right now isn't even a fraction of the agony I endured in my last life. I turned to Mark, letting my eyes redden at just the right moment. Director Harris, I don't need a house and I don't want anything from him anymore. I just want to live peacefully with my daughter. Could you help me find a place to stay? Something small is fine. I can pay rent. Mark let out a sigh, the scales in his heart clearly tipping fully toward me, the weaker side. Comrade Emily, don't worry, that's my responsibility. Behind the administrative office there's a small yard that's currently vacant. It isn't big, but it's clean, and it has its own space. You and your daughter can move in for now. My heart pounded wildly. It was better than I ever imagined. Thank you so much, Director Harris. The gratitude came from the very bottom of my heart. It was like rain falling in a long drought. Suddenly Ethan roared, his voice full of panic and fury. You can't go there. Emily, you have to come back with me to the family quarters. At last he realized I was serious, that I truly meant to leave him, using a way he had never imagined, escaping his control completely. In his eyes now there wasn't only anger, there was also an emotion even he hadn't recognized before. Fear. The fear of losing something he had always believed, without question, belonged to him. How laughable. What right did he have to say no? I didn't even spare him a glance. I gave Director Harris a heartfelt thank you. You've really gone out of your way for us. My daughter and I are deeply grateful. Emily. Ethan stepped forward as if to grab me. His eyes at that moment were like those of a wounded beast. ready to tear into me. Mark Harris immediately moved to stand in front of me, his face cold. "Captain Ethan, what do you think you're doing? In the middle of the street, are you planning to lay hands on a female comrade who just got divorced?" Ethan's chest rose and fell sharply, his eyes bloodshot. He glared at me with a look no longer made up of just anger. It carried humiliation, confusion, and a trace of chaos he himself might not even recognize. He couldn't understand. He couldn't understand how the woman who once obeyed his every word, who once saw him as her whole world, could in just one night become so distant, so unfamiliar. "Fine. Very fine." Ethan's teeth ground audibly, every word dripping like venom. "Emily, remember this day. You'd better not regret it." Without waiting for a reply, he suddenly spun around, almost fleeing as he yanked open the Jeep door. The engine roared, and the vehicle sped off, leaving behind a cloud of dust and the heavy stench of gasoline. As Ethan's car disappeared, I clutched Lily a little tighter. My body trembled slightly, not from fear but from exhilaration. I had won. "Comrade Emily, don't worry," Mark said gently, pulling me back to the present. "As long as we're here, he won't dare do anything to you. Come on, let me take you and your daughter to see the place." I nodded and followed him, walking in the opposite direction of the military compound. The house behind the neighborhood office was even better than I imagined. Pushing open a small wooden gate revealed a neat cement courtyard. In one corner stood a grape trellis. It was winter now, only bare branches remained, but I could already picture it in summer, lush and full of shade. The house itself wasn't big. One main room, a smaller side room, and a little kitchen with a stove for cooking. Modest, but complete. Most importantly, the place was peaceful. No whispering neighbors, no familiar faces to reopen old wounds. "This used to be the neighborhood storage shed," Mark explained apologetically. "It was only cleared out recently. It's a bit simple, but please make do for now." "No, it's not simple at all," I quickly answered, my nose stinging. "Director Harris, this is so much better than I ever imagined. You truly are a great benefactor to me and my daughter." Mark waved off my words with a smile, gave a few more reminders, then left. In the courtyard, only Lily and I remained. "Mom, is this our new home?" she asked, peeking out from my arms, looking curiously around. "Yes," I said, setting her down and crouching to meet her eyes. "Do you like it here?" She nodded vigorously, then pointed her tiny hand at the withered grape trellis. "Mom, in the spring will it sprout again?" My heart felt as though something soft had brushed against it. "Yes, when spring comes, it will sprout." I smiled faintly. "Just like us. The future for you and me, Lily, will sprout and grow too." The first thing I did after settling in was go to the cooperative. I still had some money left, enough for us to get by for a while. I bought rice, flour, and even treated us to a small piece of meat. Back at the courtyard, I started a fire and prepared to cook. As I was busy with my hands, a knock sounded on the wooden gate. Sharp, deliberate raps. Thinking it was Director Harris, I quickly wiped my hands and went to open the door. But standing outside was the very person I least wanted to see. It was Ethan. He had changed into civilian clothes, though his expression was just as grim. In his hand, he carried a mesh bag filled with fruit and several cans of food. When he saw me, his lips moved as though he wanted to say something. I didn't give him the chance. "Why are you here?" I blocked the doorway, my voice like ice. "Captain Ethan." I thought I made myself perfectly clear earlier today. Perhaps he hadn't expected me to be so resolute. He stood there for a moment, then awkwardly thrust the bag of food forward. "I came to see how you and Lily are doing. This place is lacking in many things. Take these for now." His tone was stiff, forced, the same condescending air of someone bestowing charity from on high. I laughed. "No need." Looking him straight in the eye, I enunciated each word. "Lily and I don't lack these things. What we lack, you could never give." The hand holding the mesh bag froze midair. For the first time, his handsome face revealed a trace of confusion. "What do you mean? If you need something, just say it. I'll buy it." He still didn't understand. He still thought everything in this world could be solved with money and material goods. Looking at him, I suddenly felt a deep pity. "Ethan, what I lack is sincerity. A real home, not one built on calculation and pretense. Respect. To be seen as a human being with feelings, not as a chess piece for you to move around as you wish." With every word I spoke, his face grew paler. Had he ever given me those things? Never. What he gave me was cold indifference, demands, and betrayal, pain that had cut straight to my soul. Ethan opened his mouth, his throat working, but no words came. Those eyes that had always been filled with command and authority now held only disorder and helplessness. He wanted to refute me, but there was nothing he could deny. "Take your things back," I said, glancing at the bag in his hand. "Give them to someone who needs them, to Comrade Samantha, perhaps." The moment I said her name, his body jolted as if I had struck a vital point. "What nonsense are you talking about?" he barked reflexively, though guilt rang clear in his voice. "Nonsense." My laugh didn't reach my eyes. "Don't assume everyone's a fool. This whole fake divorce scheme, wasn't it just so you could righteously bring her into the house meant for a difficult family?" The final veil was torn away. There was no room for him to maneuver, no retreat left. Ethan's complexion flickered from white to green, a sight both pitiful and grotesque. He hadn't imagined that the plan he thought watertight would be exposed in every detail. "How did you know?" he stammered, horror filling his eyes. "How did I know?" Of course I knew, because I had already died once. Just then the wooden gate next door creaked open. A woman poked her head out, carrying a wash basin, her curious gaze darting toward us. It was Mrs. Wilson, the well-known busybody of the neighborhood, warm-hearted but unable to resist gossip. The moment she saw Ethan, then me, her eyes lit up as if she had sniffed out a major scandal. "Well, isn't this Emily? And this is..." Ethan's face flushed red, almost the color of raw liver. Above all, he cared about appearances in front of others. He could yell at me, but he could not endure becoming the subject of street gossip. I ignored Mrs. Wilson. My eyes stayed locked on Ethan as I issued my order, crisp and firm. "Guests dismissed. Please leave. If you don't, I'll tell her everything, how you schemed against your own wife and child for another woman. Exploiting government housing policies to snatch up welfare homes, letting the whole neighborhood hear it. That was a blatant threat." Ethan's fists clenched at his sides, knuckles cracking. He glared at me, but in the end, he didn't dare do anything. Under Mrs. Wilson's curious gaze, he nearly ground his teeth to dust, then spun around and hurled the mesh bag to the ground. Fruit scattered across the courtyard. Without looking back, he strode out of the narrow alley. I stood there watching his back until he disappeared around the corner, then finally closed the gate. The courtyard shut out the noise outside. Leaning against the cold wooden door, I let out a long breath. My body was a little tired, but my heart felt lighter than it ever had. I knew I couldn't rely on Director Harris forever, and I couldn't keep living buried in resentment. Money would soon run out. I had to stand on my own feet. But what could I do? The 1980s were indeed a time of opportunity, but for a woman carrying a small child, those chances always came with obstacles and judgmental eyes. I sat on a stool, watching Lily happily play in the courtyard, and my mind drifted. In my past life, I gave up everything for Ethan. My world revolved only around him, around our so-called family, until I was nearly cut off from society. But then, a thought flashed across my mind. Before I died in my last life, I had been gravely ill. I couldn't eat much, yet the one thing that stirred my appetite was a sweet and spicy sauce I made myself. Tangy and hot in perfect balance, it was easy to eat, delicious with noodles or bread. Even the nurse who cared for me had praised it endlessly, joking, "If you ever sold this sauce, you'd make a fortune." Sweet and spicy sauce. The idea burst like fire in my chilled heart. Yes, I would sell sauce. It was the one thing I knew I could do, the one thing that truly belonged to me. Action was the best medicine to heal every wound. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, I was already up. I carefully counted the money I had left and tucked it away. After kissing Lily's sleeping cheek, I entrusted her to Mrs. Wilson, the nosy but warm-hearted neighbor, and rode off alone on my old bicycle, heading straight to the city's wholesale market. That bicycle had once been my dowry, and now it was my most precious possession. The wholesale market in the 1980s came alive at dawn. The clatter of deliveries, the noisy bargaining, it was like a symphony of life. I didn't wander aimlessly. I knew exactly what I needed. The red chilies had to be the thin-skinned, thick-fleshed kind. The purple garlic had to be pungent and firm. Then there was soybean paste, white sugar, and other spices, all essential. My money wasn't much, so every coin had to be spent with precision. I bargained patiently with the stall owners, shaving off a dime here, 5 cents there, gathering little by little. At last, nearly all my money was gone, but in return I had 2 heavy baskets full of ingredients strapped to either side of my bike. When I got home, Mrs. Wilson was sitting in the courtyard with Lily on her lap, basking in the sun. "Emily, you're back. My goodness, so many chilies. What are you planning?" she asked curiously. I smiled. "Just making some sauce to keep on hand." I said nothing more. Before results, any promises would only be empty talk. I washed my hands, then carefully picked through the red chilies, cleaning each one before leaving them to drain. Together with peeled cloves of purple garlic, I placed everything into the stone mortar. Pound after pound, the mixture broke down, releasing its sharp, fiery fragrance. It was exhausting work, but I didn't feel tired at all. Inside me was a calm steadiness I had never known before. In my past life, these hands had been used only for scrubbing laundry. In my past life, these hands were only for cooking and serving a man. But in this life, I wanted to use them to create a future. For myself and for my daughter. The crushed red chilies, the minced purple garlic, the thick, glossy soybean paste, all of it blended together under my hands. I lit the stove and simmered the mixture slowly over a low flame. Before long, a rich aroma filled the air, sweet, sour, and spicy all at once, drifting out of the small kitchen and spilling into the courtyard. Even Lily, who had been playing outside, couldn't resist. She ran to the doorway, sniffing with her tiny nose. "Mom, it smells so good," I smiled, scooped a bit of the sauce, cooled it, and held it to her lips. Lily cautiously licked a taste, and her eyes lit up instantly. "It's delicious, Mom, it's sweet and spicy." I knew then that I had succeeded. At that moment, a knock came at the gate. Mrs. Wilson had been drawn by the fragrance. "Emily, what on earth are you cooking? The whole alley smells it." She peeked her head in, her face full of curiosity. I didn't hide it. I ladled a little into a small bowl and handed it to her. "Mrs. Wilson, this is chili sauce I made myself. Please try it and give me your opinion." She tasted it with doubt, but within seconds her eyes widened like copper bells. "Heavens, Emily, your skill is amazing. This sauce is even better than what they sell at the cooperative. Really, it's delicious." She praised without restraint, then suddenly lowered her voice as if remembering something. "Oh, right. Let me tell you what I heard this morning at the market. People were talking about your household. Word is, things haven't been going smoothly for Captain Ethan lately. Seems he's been a little too close with that performer Samantha, and someone reported them. You know how strict the unit is about conduct. This could be serious trouble." My hand, stirring the sauce, paused. Retribution already? In my last life, the matter between Ethan and Samantha wasn't exposed until a year after our divorce. By then, he had arranged everything neatly, and his reputation barely took a dent. But in this life, because I had been reborn, the spark had ignited much sooner. Mrs. Wilson kept chattering on. "Tell me, what kind of man does that? You're such a good woman, and he gets mixed up with someone like her." I didn't respond. Silently, I filled the bright red chili sauce into the glass jars I had prepared. One after another, the jars gleamed in the sunlight, dazzling and enticing. Whether Ethan faced trouble or not was no longer my concern. What I needed to focus on was my new life. When Mrs. Wilson left, she insisted on pressing 5 dimes into my hand and carried a small bowl of sauce home, saying she would let her husband try it with his wine. I held the still warm bills, glanced at the 10 jars of sauce neatly lined up before me, and a bigger plan began to form. Waiting passively for people to come by was not a long-term solution. I had to take the initiative. Tomorrow, I would go to the state-owned textile factory on the east side of the city. There, the female workers were many, and their purchasing power was the strongest. The very first money I would earn in my new life would start there, at Textile Factory Number 1, the heart of the city. Thousands of workers labored inside, and when the dismissal bell rang, a black stream of people poured out through the main gate, the scene lively beyond words. That would be my first battlefield. The next afternoon, I rose early and steamed a pot of plump, fragrant white buns. A dozen jars of chili sauce were carefully wrapped in clean cloth and placed in my basket, with the still warm buns hanging from the other side. I rode my old bicycle into the wind. Though there was still an hour before the factory bell, the gate was already buzzing with activity. Sunflower seed vendors, old women selling popsicles, the street vendor selling needles and thread, the women hawking sunflower seeds. Everyone had claimed the best spots early. I was a stranger, selling something rare, homemade chili sauce. No one paid me any attention. I chose a quiet corner, spread out a clean cloth, and arranged each jar of bright red sauce neatly on top. Then I brought out my secret weapon, steamed buns. I tore each bun into small pieces, skewered them with bamboo sticks, and brushed on a thin layer of sauce, the sweet and spicy aroma irresistible. Unlike the vendors around me shouting to draw customers, I stood silently behind my cloth. I believed the flavor itself would speak louder than words. Minutes ticked by. Then the factory bell rang, and a flood of workers poured out like a breaking dam. Everyone was in a hurry to get home. Some glanced my way, but no one stopped. My heart began to sink. Had I been too naive? Just as I was about to give up, 3 women in factory uniforms, chatting and laughing, walked past. One of them caught sight of the vivid red sauce and paused. "Oh, what's this? Looks so bright and delicious." My chance had come. I broke into a bright smile and held out a piece of bun with sauce. "Sister, this is sweet chili sauce I made myself. Try it. It's free." Another woman quickly tugged at her arm. "Don't eat random stuff. Who knows if it's clean?" The first hesitated. I rushed to reassure her. "Look, I sterilized all these jars with boiling water. It's very clean. Just try one bite. If it's not good, I won't insist." My gaze was earnest and steady. Finally, she was convinced. She took the piece, cautiously tasted it, and her eyes lit up. "Wow, this is amazing," she exclaimed. "It's tangy and sweet, with just the right hint of spice." She immediately called to her friends. "Come on, you've got to try this. It's really good." With one brave taster, the other 2 no longer hesitated. Each took a piece, and their reactions were just as enthusiastic. "Heavens, this is delicious. This would be incredible tossed with noodles." The first woman grinned and pulled out her money. "Sister, how much for a jar?" "A large jar with the best ingredients, 1 yuan each," I said firmly. It wasn't cheap, but for the quality, it was fair. "Fine, give me one." She handed over a crisp 1 yuan note. My very first sale was complete, and just like that, the spark caught. People nearby, who had been watching curiously, saw someone actually buy and enjoy it. Suddenly, they crowded in. "Let me try." "How long does this keep?" "Sister, can you give me a little discount?" In an instant, my tiny stall was surrounded. I worked quickly, offering samples and answering eagerly. "Don't worry, it's clean. All top-quality ingredients. In this cool weather, it'll last a good 2 weeks." "Sister, I really can't make it cheaper. This takes a lot of work." In just over 10 minutes, every jar I had brought was sold out. My hands trembled as I counted the bills, heart pounding with excitement. 13.5 yuan in total. After subtracting costs, nearly 8 yuan profit. In a time when the average monthly wage of a worker was only 3 or 4 yuan, this was a fortune. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the money. I had done it. I could truly support Lily on my own now. Carefully tucking the money into my pocket, I began to pack up, ready to head home, when a sharp female voice rang out behind me. "Oh, I thought it was someone important. Isn't this the ex-wife of Captain Ethan? Got dumped and now reduced to setting up a stall on the street?" That voice. I instantly turned around. Not far away, Samantha was clinging to the arm of a strange man, her face full of mockery and smugness as she looked at me. Her voice was sharp, bitter, and venomous. If this had been my past life, I would have burned with shame at her words, wishing I could crawl into a hole to hide. But now I slowly straightened up, brushed the dust from my hands, and looked her in the face. I even allowed myself a faint smile. "Comrade Samantha, you've gotten 2 things wrong." My calmness caught her off guard. The smug smile froze on her lips for a moment. "First," I said, raising one finger, my voice carrying clearly, "I am no longer Captain Ethan's wife. We are divorced. My name is Emily." I deliberately emphasized the word divorced. The people lingering nearby erupted in whispers of surprise. "The captain divorced? That's shocking." Samantha's face immediately soured. "Second," I continued, lowering my hand and letting my gaze fall on the man she was holding on to. His slick-back hair and shifty eyes made it obvious what kind of person he was. Not a decent one. "I earn clean money with my own hands to support my daughter. That's not disgrace. It's ability." I paused, my smile deepening though my eyes were cold. At least I know where to stop. Unlike some people, scheming for every scrap of something that was never theirs to begin with. The words were light, but they struck hard. Samantha's face went pale, then flushed red. She looked around in panic, unable to find a place to hide her embarrassment. She hadn't expected that in just a few days. The meek, cowering Emily she once trampled on had turned sharp and unyielding. She wanted to argue back, but couldn't. Everything I said was true. The gazes of those around us shifted. They looked at me, then at Samantha, and it was plain in their eyes who deserved respect and who deserved scorn. Samantha trembled all over, pointing a finger at me, too choked up to speak. I didn't bother with her anymore. Instead, I turned my eyes deliberately to the man at her side and said with feigned curiosity, "Comrade Samantha, weren't you always walking with, or should I say, arm in arm with, Captain Ethan? This comrade here looks unfamiliar. Aren't you going to introduce him?" "Shut up," Samantha shrieked like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Panic filled her face. She had come here today hoping to see me miserable, to mock me after Ethan had cast me aside. She wanted to watch me fall into despair. I didn't know what exactly was going on between her and Ethan, but judging by her reaction, it was clear she didn't want him to know this man existed. That was enough for me. I wanted her to live in unease. "Emily, just you wait," Samantha spat venomously, then dragged the man into the crowd and fled. Her retreating figure was so pitiful it was almost laughable. Watching her run away in disgrace filled me with deep satisfaction. At that moment, the worker who had first bought chili sauce from me stepped forward, snorting in disgust. "What nonsense! Someone as cheap as that dares to criticize others?" "Emily, don't mind her. I support you. This sauce is delicious. Will you be back tomorrow?" "Yes, we'll come again," several other workers chimed in. "We'll tell our friends in the factory, too." Warmth spread through my chest. Thank you everyone. I'll definitely come tomorrow," I said, bowing my head in genuine gratitude. Such simple kindness was more precious than anything. I packed up my things and pedaled home. The setting sun stretched my shadow long across the ground. I had never felt the road home so firm, so certain beneath my feet. But as I turned into the narrow alley leading to my house, my heart sank. Parked at the entrance of the alley was a familiar military jeep. Standing beside it was the one person I least wanted to see at that moment, Ethan. What was he doing here? Was he planning to pull something again? My chest tightened and suddenly the bicycle beneath me felt as heavy as lead. I gripped the brakes tightly and stopped a few meters away. Between us stretched a hazy distance, shrouded in the dim glow of the setting sun. Ethan didn't move. He only stood there, staring at me. His eyes were complicated now, not just angry or surprised like before. There was something else in them, something weary, troubled. But whatever it was, I no longer cared to decipher it. Finally, he spoke. "Earlier you went to the state-owned textile factory." His voice was hoarse. I stiffened. "How did he know?" I didn't answer. Instead, I asked coldly, "Captain Ethan, did you wait here just to ask me that?" His reply came with the tone of a command, one that allowed no refusal. I laughed. "Yes, I went there. I sold chili sauce to earn money to raise my daughter. Do you have any more orders you'd like to give me?" I thought he would explode, scold me for shaming him. But no, he only stood in silence, staring. After a long time, he pulled a cigarette from his pocket, lit it, and drew in a deep breath. In the haze of smoke, his face was dark and unreadable. "Emily," he finally said, his voice rougher, "someone in the unit reported me and Samantha." So he admitted it at last. I had already known, but hearing it from his own mouth still sent a chill slicing through my chest. His eyes narrowed, searching me. The letter was anonymous, but it was sent right after we divorced. Do you know who did it? He suspected me. I met his gaze calmly, without flinching. "I don't know. Maybe someone who couldn't stomach your filth anymore, that's all." He stared at me for a long time, as if trying to catch a crack in my composure. But I was too calm. He crushed out the cigarette and stepped closer. The reek of smoke and the icy aura around him made me instinctively step back, tightening my grip on the bicycle's handlebars. "Emily, you have to help me." He said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I froze, then almost laughed aloud. "Help you?" I asked, my voice dripping with scorn. "I've thought this through," he said, deadly serious. "This matter could ruin everything. The organization has already called me in. If I can't handle it well, my entire career could end." "So what?" My tone was cold. "Whether your career collapses or not, what does that have to do with me?" His face flushed red with anger. "Emily, we were husband and wife. Do you have to be this heartless?" I laughed, but tears stung my eyes. My laughter was filled with bitterness, heavy with mockery. "Ethan, when you forced me into a fake divorce for Samantha's sake, did you remember you had a wife? When you tossed me and my daughter into a damp storage room like trash, did you think of husband and wife? And now, when your career is in jeopardy, suddenly you remember me?" His face turned red, then green, unable to withstand my accusations. "I need you," he finally forced out, his words ugly with desperation. "I need you to tell the organization we acted in a moment of impulse, that we're planning to remarry. As long as you say that, they'll believe the accusations aren't credible." I stood in silence, listening to this man once again speak such shameless, selfish words. At last, I fully understood what I was in his eyes. I had never been a person in his eyes. Before, I was just a tool for him to keep up appearances. Now, I was nothing more than a tool for him to escape trouble. When the last glimmer of hope inside me finally went out, I felt utterly calm. I looked at him and spoke each word clearly. "Ethan, listen carefully. First, I will not help you. Whether your career lives or dies has nothing to do with me. Second, there is absolutely no possibility left between us. You should let go of that hope. Third, if you dare disturb me again, I won't hesitate to go straight to the organization and personally confirm that I was the one who wrote that letter of accusation." With that, I didn't even bother to look at his face, twisted in shock and fury. I pressed hard on the pedals and shot past him on my bicycle. This time, I didn't look back. I only heard behind me a strangled roar, torn from the depths of despair, filled with anger, resentment, and above all, a feeling he had likely never experienced in his life. Regret. Too late. The moment I entered my little courtyard and bolted the gate, all my strength seemed to drain away. I leaned against the cold wooden door, my back chilled, but my heart pounding wildly in my chest. Over and over, I replayed Ethan's expression in my mind. From shock to humiliation to despair, there was no pleasure in it. Only emptiness, a cold void, pressing on my chest. The man I had once loved to my very bones, whom I had admired for half a lifetime, I finally saw through him. This was all he was. How laughable, how pitiful. That night, I slept more soundly than ever before. The next morning, I no longer thought of Ethan. His world was collapsing. Mine was only just beginning. Carefully, I laid out yesterday's earnings on the table, each small bill like a medal for my first step toward independence. I didn't stash the money away. The best investment was in myself. I went back to the market. This time, I bought 3 times more ingredients than before. I even gritted my teeth and purchased a much larger pot and 50 brand new glass jars. I also bought a fresh piece of cloth, planning to make a small sign with 3 simple words: Emily's chili sauce. Clear, simple. It was mine. A new beginning. The process of cooking was just as exhausting, but watching the pot of scarlet sauce bubbling and smelling its fragrance fill the courtyard gave me new strength. That afternoon, I returned once again to the gates of the state-owned textile factory. This time, the scene was completely different. I hadn't even finished setting up when the worker who had bought my sauce the day before came beaming, dragging along 7 or 8 of her colleagues. "Comrade Emily, finally you're here. We've been waiting for you." That's right. Last night I took the sauce home, and my husband devoured 3 bowls of noodles with it. "Quick, give me 2 jars. My mother asked me to buy one for her too." Before I could even hand out samples with buns, the 50 jars I had brought were already snapped up by the crowd. "Everyone, don't rush. There's enough for each of you." I was overwhelmed by the sudden enthusiasm, my hands clumsy, barely able to keep up. I never imagined happiness could come so quickly, so fiercely. In less than half an hour, everything I had brought was sold out again. Counting the money, my hands shook even more than yesterday. Over 50 yuan. Nearly the equivalent of more than half of Ethan's monthly salary. I stared at the warm bills in my hands, tears brimming in my eyes. So this is what it meant, to rely on myself. I really could live this well. "Comrade, wait a moment." Just as I was about to pack up and head home, a middle-aged man in cotter clothes approached, smiling. Behind him stood two men in white coats, clearly staff from the factory cafeteria. "May I ask who you are?" I asked, a little bewildered. "I'm Chairman Lee, head of the factory union." His smile was warm. "I heard from the comrades in the cafeteria that your chili sauce is very popular with the workers." I smiled modestly. "It's just a little skill I taught myself. I'm already grateful that everyone supports me." A little skill that wins praise from the entire factory is real ability. Chairman Lee's eyes held open admiration. Then he got straight to the point. "Comrade Emily, I'm here today to discuss something with you. Cooperation." "Cooperation?" I was stunned. "That's right." He gestured toward the cafeteria staff behind him. "Our factory cafeteria serves thousands of meals every day. We'd like to purchase your chili sauce on a long-term basis to use as a condiment for the workers' meals." In my head, it was as if fireworks exploded. It was like a meat pie falling straight from the sky into my lap. To supply the one state-owned textile factory cafeteria meant a large, stable order. It meant that Emily's chili sauce had a foundation I wouldn't have dared dream of. "Of course, we won't let you suffer a loss," Chairman Lee continued. "We can sign an official supply contract, with pricing based on the retail rate you sold it today. What do you think?" My heart pounded wildly. Before my eyes, I could almost see a golden road stretching out, but alongside that brilliance came crushing pressure. Supplying thousands of people with nothing but my small courtyard, one pot, and a tiny kitchen was impossible. I would need a larger space, more help, stricter production methods. Could I really do it? I knew this was the biggest crossroads of my life. If I stepped back, I could continue selling small amounts, living quietly. But if I stepped forward, I would enter a bigger world, one full of risks, but also overflowing with opportunity. I gripped the warm stack of bills in my hand and drew a deep breath. Then I looked Chairman Lee straight in the eye. "Thank you for your trust. I accept this cooperation." The moment I finished, Chairman Lee's face broke into a broad smile of approval. He extended his hand. "Comrade Emily, I look forward to working with you. On behalf of the #1 state-owned textile factory, welcome aboard." I reached out and clasped his hand firmly. Happy cooperation. On the way home, my heart was both aflame and turbulent. The fire was joy at my success, the expectation of the future. The waves were clarity, the sober awareness of reality. The factory's order was the opportunity I had dreamed of, but it was also a boulder pressing on my shoulders. With my tiny courtyard and single pot, even without sleep or rest, I could never supply thousands. I needed a bigger place, a space that could truly be called a workshop. But where could I find one? As I thought and thought, one figure appeared in my mind. Mark Harris, Director Harris of the Neighborhood Committee. He was my benefactor, the only person in this city I could truly turn to, and someone with real connections. The next day, I brought 2 of my best packaged jars of chili sauce and knocked on the door of the neighborhood office. After hearing why I came and about the contract I had just signed with the state-owned factory, Director Harris was so stunned his mouth hung open for a long time before he could close it. His eyes, when they finally focused on me, were full of amazement and deep emotion. "Comrade Emily, you've made me see you in a whole new light," Director Harris said with genuine admiration. "You've got ambition, and you've got ability." He paced back and forth, smoking, then suddenly slapped his thigh. "There actually is a place," he said. "Under the name of the Neighborhood Committee, there's an old abandoned sauce workshop. Behind it is a fairly large, empty yard. The space is big, and it already has several brick stoves. It's just been left unused for years and needs cleaning up. As for rent, don't worry, I'll make sure you get the lowest rate possible." He thumped his chest in assurance. My heart pounded as if that place had been prepared just for me. He led me there, and the yard was even bigger than I had imagined, and more desolate. Weeds grew as tall as a person, and the walls were covered with moss. But the moment I saw those large brick stoves, my eyes lit up. Once cleaned, my production capacity could increase tenfold. "Well?" Director Harris asked. "It's perfect." I couldn't hide my excitement. "This is the place, Director Harris." I was already calculating how to clear the yard when a cold, familiar voice cut through the air behind me. "Emily." That voice, I would recognize it even in ashes. I spun around and saw Ethan standing right at the gate. It had only been a few days, but he looked like a different man. Stubble darkened his chin, his once crisp uniform hung loose and wrinkled. He looked disheveled, weary, his frame thinner, his eyes sunken and bloodshot. His gaze swept across the deserted yard and finally settled on my face, still glowing with excitement. "You're planning to make chili sauce here?" His voice was hoarse, tinged with a bitterness he himself didn't seem to realize. Perhaps he couldn't believe that the woman who had once orbited only around him now dared build a career from ruins on her own. I ignored him and turned to Director Harris. "Director, let's go back and complete the paperwork." "Wait." Ethan's voice stopped me. He stepped forward, blocking my path. Director Harris instinctively moved to shield me, his stance alert. "I heard about what happened at the state-owned factory," Ethan said, his eyes a swirl of shock, bitterness, and perhaps even a trace of jealousy. "You've done well." His belated hollow praise stirred nothing in me. "I heard you're short on help," he added, forcing a stiff smile, almost pleading. "I can help you. I can call some of my old army buddies. They're strong and hardworking." I looked at him, the man who had once been so arrogant, so proud, now standing before me in a way I had never seen, never thought I would ever see. He was trying to win my favor, to patch over a chasm that could never be filled with a few scraps of belated effort. "Too bad," I cut him off coldly. "No need. Captain Ethan, my business is only just beginning. This small temple can't hold a Buddha as big as you. And more importantly, my work is clean. I don't want, or need, anything tainted." Ethan's face turned as white as paper. 2 years later. "Director Emily, the orders from the Southern Cooperative have doubled again. Our production might not keep up." "Director Emily, the reporters are here. They want to do a special feature on Emily's chili sauce." I stood in my bright, spotless office, looking down at the workshop below. On the factory floor, workers in spotless white uniforms bustled along the modern production line. The air was filled with the sweet, spicy fragrance I knew so well, a scent that gave me peace of mind. Emily's chili sauce had grown from a little street stall into a well-known local brand. We had our own factory, dozens of workers, and our products were shipped to cities all around. "Mom!" Lily came running in, her hair tied into two playful tails like little goat horns bouncing like butterfly wings. She was taller now, rounder, her cheeks rosy with health, her smile as bright as ever. I hugged my daughter and gazed out the window at the land that held my hard-won career. A strange calm filled me. For 2 years I'd been so busy I barely had time to think of the past. Ethan. That name had long stopped crossing my mind. I'd heard he was eventually disciplined by the unit, demoted, and sent to some remote posting. As for Samantha, once Ethan fell, she quickly married a Hong Kong businessman and disappeared from sight. Their world no longer had anything to do with mine. Until that one afternoon. I was preparing to leave work when my secretary knocked on the door, her expression uneasy. "Director Emily, there's someone outside asking for you. He said he's an old acquaintance." My heart skipped a beat. I walked to the factory gate. Under the glow of the setting sun stood a lonely figure. He wore a faded blue worker's uniform and a pair of fraying canvas shoes caked with dust. He turned, revealing a face lined with wrinkles carved by time and hardship. Ethan. He was no longer the proud soldier of the past, but just an ordinary middle-aged man. His eyes met mine, heavy with regret and pain that could never be erased. "I'm back," he rasped. "I just wanted to see you and see Lily. How is she?" "We're doing very well," I replied coolly, my voice polite but distant. He forced a smile, one uglier than tears. "Emily, I've heard about everything you've accomplished. You're even greater than I ever imagined. Hundreds, thousands of times greater." His eyes grew red. "I'm sorry." The words fell from his mouth like lead, far too late. "Emily, I was blind, a fool. I threw away the most precious thing in my life with my own hands." His voice cracked. A man in his 40s was crying in front of me like a child. "I regret it, Emily. Not a day has passed in these 2 years that I haven't regretted it. I miss you so much it drives me mad. I miss Lily so much it tears my heart apart. I even went to find Samantha and slapped her. Not because she deceived me, but because she made me realize how stupid I was. Emily, can you forgive me? Can we remarry? I don't need anything else. I'll work like a beast of burden for you, guard the gate if I must. Just let me be with you and Lily." He begged me, low and pitiful. The scene was familiar, except our roles had completely reversed. I looked at him quietly, but there was no hatred left, no love either, not even pity, only the sense that the man before me was a stranger. "Ethan," I said evenly, "I accept your apology." A faint spark of hope flickered in his eyes, but it's too late. That spark died instantly. I don't need anyone to be my beast of burden. I don't need a gatekeeper. My factory has security, my home has protection. Lily and I, we're enough. I pointed into the distance where Mark Harris was holding Lily's hand, laughing with her as brightly as the sun. Director Harris is now the factory's advisor. He was also the man Lily trusted most, the one she was closest to. "You see," I said evenly, "we're living very well. Without you, we're living even better." As for forgiveness, I shook my head. "I don't forgive you. I've only released myself. I don't hate you anymore, because you're not worth even a shred more of my feelings." I turned away and walked toward my daughter, toward the future ahead of us, bathed in the soft golden glow of the setting sun. I didn't look back. After hearing Emily's story, I understood something. Sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do isn't forgiveness. It's letting go, so she can keep on living. Not for anyone else, but for herself. Emily had once loved, endured pain, and tolerated humiliation until her heart was shattered. But when life gave her a second chance, she didn't choose hatred, she didn't beg. She chose freedom. She started again from nothing, from a tiny street stall selling chili sauce. She built a brand in her own name, not to prove herself to anyone, but to raise her daughter with her own hands, in dignity and peace. She didn't forgive the man who betrayed her, but she no longer hated him either, because forgiveness wasn't the point. Releasing herself was. Amid gossip, scrutiny, and even desperate pleas that came too late, she held her head high. Because she knew happiness doesn't come from being chosen by someone else. It comes from choosing how to live for herself. A little house, a grapevine trellis at the porch, the bright laughter of her daughter, that was the gentlest reward for a heart once broken, but never defeated. This wasn't just a love story, this was a declaration of freedom. For women, for anyone who has ever been hurt, and is learning to walk forward on their own 2 feet. He had only been away on a mission for a short while, but when he returned home, he found that the little girl he had adopted had changed. She no longer faked illness just to spend more time with him, no longer pretended to have a fever and called him husband. Instead, she now addressed him politely and distantly as uncle, a title she had never been willing to use before. She no longer dressed in stylish, revealing clothes, parading around in front of him like she used to. Instead, she now wore a faded school uniform, covering herself up tightly. He thought I had simply matured now that I had turned 18. But in reality, I had been reborn. In my past life, I had managed to marry Ethan Carter. But after 50 years of hard work and devotion, when he passed away, I saw the photo he had left behind. In the photo, his white moonlight was smiling gently, radiantly. On the back of the picture, he had written, "The love of my life for 50 years." At that moment, my love shattered. In this life, I would no longer stubbornly chase after his expectations for me to attend Harvard. Instead, I applied to the first military medical university. Like my parents, who had sacrificed their lives for peace, I wanted to become a doctor without borders. For once, I wanted to live according to my own will. On the day I received my admission letter from the military medical university, Ethan had just returned from a mission for the military district. Holding the thick envelope in my hand, I instinctively hid it behind my back when I looked up and saw Ethan standing in the main hall with Olivia Jennings, arranging some things. Olivia's sickly sweet voice rang out. "This fine silk fabric is a gift for Aunt Helen. She mentioned before that she wanted a tailor to make her something to wear in the fall. And these records, I asked a colleague to find them for me. Didn't you say that Grandpa loves opera? These will keep him entertained." After saying that, she took out a blue plaid tie and gestured as if to put it around Ethan's neck. With a shy smile, she added, "I secretly bought this for you when we were at the mall that day. It suits you perfectly. Let's save it for our wedding day. All right?" My mind went blank. So, they really were getting married. Then, I should leave, shouldn't I? Without my interference or reckless foolishness, Ethan was finally able to be with the one he truly loved. Olivia noticed me, but acted as if she hadn't. She wrapped her arms around Ethan's neck and deliberately asked, "Oh, did you not bring a gift back for Emily? Do you think she'll be mad at her future aunt? After all, it seems like she's never liked me much." Ethan let out a sigh. "She's just a kid, immature. Don't take it to heart. Even though she grew up in the Carter family, she's still an outsider. Sooner or later she'll move out." I flinched, my fingers trembling slightly. It felt as if my heart had been crushed into pieces. My parents had been military doctors under General Carter's command. During a battle, they sacrificed themselves to protect a young journalist who had rushed into the war zone. Seeing that I had no one left, General Carter took pity on me and adopted me. I was 7 years old then. Ethan was 17. As a child, he always comforted me, telling me to treat this place as my home, to see him as family. But now, I had become an outsider. After leading Ethan to say what she wanted to hear, Olivia finally turned to me and pretended to be surprised. "Oh, Emily, you're back." She walked over and grabbed my hand. Her sharp nails dug into my skin ever so slightly, without drawing attention. "Don't take what we just said too seriously, okay? Ethan still cares about you. It's just that during our last mission at the military base, you really went too far. He's still angry, so he just said those things in the heat of the moment. In my past life, when I found out that Ethan was taking Olivia with him to the military district for a mission, I was devastated, because he had promised me that he would take me instead. But after I confessed my feelings to him, he stopped indulging my childish demands. He even pointed at my nose and scolded me for being shameless. He withdrew all his favoritism toward me and chose to bring Olivia along instead. Olivia had even deliberately asked me, "Emily, why do you look so unhappy? Ethan and I are going for official business. I know you don't like me, but you should prioritize the bigger picture. You need to learn to differentiate what's important." Ethan, still angry, had coldly reprimanded me. "Olivia is a military news reporter. Journalists are required to document the mission. If I don't bring her, who else should I bring? Stop letting your childish thoughts interfere with our work." After they returned from the military base, they officially became a couple. To make sure I gave up completely, Ethan deliberately displayed his affection for Olivia in front of me. But this time, I didn't lock myself in my room, crying until my eyes were swollen. I didn't throw a tantrum or make a fool of myself in a desperate attempt to stop Ethan from getting married. I simply smiled and asked, "So, you two are getting married?" Ethan frowned and asked coldly, "What if we are? I'm warning you, don't try to pull anything. Olivia is going to be your aunt from now on. She'll be the future lady of the Carter family. You better know your place. Otherwise, I won't hesitate to send you to the capital to live with Grandpa." Before he could finish his sentence, I interrupted him. "Congratulations, Uncle." Ethan froze. In the past, I had never been willing to call him Uncle. But now, I finally accepted it. Ethan seemed momentarily unsettled by my response. Olivia quickly picked up on the shift in atmosphere between us. A fleeting look of unwillingness flashed across her calculating expression, but she quickly regained her composure and stepped forward with a light, easy smile. "Emily, I brought you something," she said. "Ethan and I are getting married soon, so we've been clearing out a lot of things at home. Consider this my gift to you as your future sister-in-law." She handed me a large box. When I opened it, I found it filled with old clothes. This wasn't new. Olivia always did this. Any clothes, shoes, or accessories she no longer wanted, she would pass down to me. In the past, Ethan had at least made an effort to buy me new clothes, dressing me up like a little princess. But now, I was only worthy of his cast-offs. Olivia smiled as if she were being generous. "I treat you like family. There's no need to waste money on new things when these are still perfectly fine. Look, this trench coat. I bought it when I went to the mountains for an interview. The style might be a bit outdated, and there's a small tear from when it got caught on something, but if you stitch it up, it'll be good as new. And this skirt? A tailor made it for me. It's one of a kind. It has a little stain, but that doesn't matter, does it? You're just a kid, no need to be so particular." Finally, she dug through the box and pulled out half a melted lipstick. Pressing her lips together in a smile, she added, "Ethan mentioned you like makeup. I had a colleague bring this back from overseas for me. I've barely used it, so you can have it. Ethan shot me a disapproving look. It doesn't suit you, he muttered. I let out a bitter laugh. People always said Ethan and Olivia were a perfect match, talented and beautiful, a couple made in heaven. And yet, I couldn't accept it. I had once thought that if I wore Olivia's old clothes and put on a mature woman's makeup, maybe Ethan would look at me differently. But in his eyes, I had only ever been an imitation, a cheap and laughable copy. This time, I didn't fight it. I smiled naturally and said, "Thank you, Uncle Ethan. Thank you, Olivia. But I'm still a student, and these things don't really suit me. You should keep them for yourselves." It was only then that they finally noticed the change in me. I was no longer wearing clothes that didn't match my age. No longer covering my face in poorly applied makeup to seem older. Instead, I had put on my school uniform, the same uniform I had once hated for being too plain and childish, the same one that now wrapped me up completely. Ethan's expression softened slightly. "It's good that you're finally acting your age," he said. I took a deep breath. "Do you need anything else from me, Uncle Ethan, Olivia? If not, I'd like to go back to my room and rest." They had no reason to stop me. I turned and left, leaving them behind. That evening, Ethan and Olivia went out to order their wedding attire and cakes. It wasn't until late at night that I saw the headlights of his old military Jeep flicker outside the house. I had already eaten dinner alone. Sitting in my room, I quietly packed my things. When I looked up, I found Ethan standing at the doorway. I didn't know how long he had been there. His gaze drifted to the thick envelope sitting on my desk, his expression shifting ever so slightly. "Is that your admission letter from Harvard?" he asked. Ethan had always wanted me to apply to Harvard. He believed I should attend the best university, receive the best education. In my previous life, I had done everything to meet his expectations. I had studied endlessly, pushing myself to exhaustion, and finally, I had gotten in. I had followed his wishes step by step, hoping it would bring me closer to him. But even then, I had never truly won his heart. In this life, I had chosen a different path. But I didn't tell him the truth. I simply nodded and said, "Yes." It arrived yesterday. For the first time in a long while, Ethan smiled. "You should go to the capital and tell Grandpa the good news. Since Olivia and I are busy preparing for the wedding, we won't have time to look after you." I gave a quiet nod. "All right." The military medical university started its semester earlier than most schools. I had been wondering how I would slip away without him noticing. But since he was sending me away himself, I no longer needed an excuse. Ethan hesitated for a moment before asking, "Do you need me to assign a security officer to take you there?" I shook my head. "No need. Then go to the train station tomorrow by yourself. Olivia and I will be visiting an old commander. Oh, and one more thing. After Olivia and I get married, we plan to convert your room into a nursery. I'll have a guest room downstairs set up for you. Make sure to pack up all your belongings before you leave." The next day, Ethan was gone by the time I woke up. I finished packing my bags, then took one last look around my room. In the wardrobe, there were still a few things he had bought for me. An old second-hand camera he had carefully selected from multiple sellers, and some small souvenirs he had brought back from his missions, things he thought would make me happy. I didn't take any of them with me. On the bedside table, there was still a photo of the two of us. I picked it up, ran my fingers lightly over the surface, and then set it back down. After all, from now on, they would be a happy family of 3. There was no longer a place for me here. I carried my luggage downstairs, pausing at the doorway for one last look at the place I had called home for the past 10 years. In my heart, I silently said goodbye to the past, to Ethan Carter. From now on, we would never see each other again. I had only been at university for a week when Ethan showed up. I had known he would find out sooner or later. After all, Grandpa Carter was in the capital, while my school was in the Northwest. The student roster of the military medical university was shared with the military. Given the Carter family's deep connections, there was no way they wouldn't uncover the truth. That day, I was carrying a thermos, on my way to the boiler room to get hot water, when Ethan's military Jeep pulled up in front of me. The moment he stepped out, he immediately confronted me. "Who told you to apply to the military medical university?" Didn't I tell you to apply to Harvard? Trailing behind him was Olivia Jennings, clinging to his arm as she added in a deliberately sweet but sharp voice. Emily, you're being so immature. Ethan and I went through so much trouble to plan a future for you. If you resent us, fine, but how could you gamble with your own future? I met Ethan's gaze steadily and said, I'm not gambling with my future. This is what I want to do. But he didn't care about what I wanted. He spoke in the same commanding tone he always used, as if his word was final. Where's your dorm? Pack your things and withdraw from school. You can retake the entrance exam next year. Hearing those words again brought back memories of my past life. I had spent countless nights studying under dim lights, pushing myself to the brink of collapse, just for a few words of approval from him. Now, standing here, I felt nothing but exhaustion. When I saw the security officer heading toward my dormitory, I instinctively stepped forward to block his way. For the first time, I called Ethan by his full name. Ethan Carter, I said, looking directly at him. What right do you have to interfere in my life? Are you speaking as an outsider, an uncle in name only, or as the man I once foolishly loved? The moment those words left my mouth, the unspoken tension between us finally broke. Ethan's face darkened, his fury barely contained. In his anger, he slapped me across the face. A ringing sound echoed in my ears, but my mind had never been clearer. That slap, considerate repayment for the years he had raised me. From now on, we owed each other nothing. Ethan seemed to realize what he had done. He looked down at his own hand, as if in disbelief, and for the first time he lowered his head and murmured, I'm sorry, Emily, but I was doing this for your own good. Isn't it better for you to attend the top university? A mocking smile tugged at the corner of my lips. No, it's not, because I am Emily Carter. I have my own dreams, my own path to follow. I don't want to live according to your expectations anymore. Ethan's frustration boiled over. He scoffed, his voice laced with disbelief. Expectations? Haven't I always made your choices for you? What expectations could you possibly have of your own? And there it was. Because everything in my life had been dictated by Ethan, I had once believed he was my whole world. I had lived solely for him, blindly chasing after him. I had thought that as long as I kept trying, he would one day see me. But now that I had stepped away from the Carter family, chosen the military medical university, and broadened my horizons, I realized Ethan was just another person in this vast world. And I had countless other choices beyond simply becoming Mrs. Carter. I let out a light laugh, my gaze unwavering. So tell me, Ethan, in what capacity do you think you have the right to interfere in my life? His expression hardened, his jaw tightening. I've made my decision. If my parents were still alive, they would support me. I have my own future, and I will pursue my dreams here. I will build my own life, my own career. I might even find someone who will walk by my side for the rest of my life. I've grown up, Ethan. I'm not that little girl who followed you around anymore. And I'm certainly not your puppet. As we spoke, a few male students jogged past us. They were fresh-faced, energetic, dressed in athletic uniforms from their morning training. One of them waved at me, flashing a bright smile. Ethan's expression twisted with something unreadable. He had probably never considered the possibility that one day I would leave him behind. That one day I would be standing beside another man, holding someone else's hand, becoming someone else's wife. I curved my lips into a faint smile. Uncle Ethan, aren't you getting married soon? Then let me wish you and the one you truly love a lifetime of happiness. A wedding requires a lot of preparation. You should be focusing on that, not on an outsider like me, someone with no blood ties to your family. I paused for a moment before continuing. I heard the wedding is scheduled for next month. University coursework is demanding, and I won't have time. I won't be attending your wedding. Ethan said nothing, but his expression darkened. Unexpectedly, something went wrong at Ethan and Olivia's wedding, and I was involved. I had only been enrolled at the military medical university for less than a month when an article in the newspaper threw me into a public controversy. On the front page was a large, grainy black and white photo of an elderly man in his 60s kneeling on the ground, his face twisted in desperation. He was clutching the hand of a young female military doctor, begging for help. And that young military doctor was me. The headline read, Elderly man suffers medical emergency, begs young military doctor for help. Heartless soldier ignores his pleas. And beneath it, the byline credited the reporter, Olivia Jennings. But that wasn't what had actually happened. The Military Medical University operated under a strict, closed campus system. Students were only allowed out once a month for a single day to buy necessities. That day, I had been at a department store near campus when I encountered the elderly man. His wife had suddenly collapsed due to a cerebral hemorrhage. But I was just a first-year student, barely trained and completely unqualified to handle a medical emergency of that scale. The only thing I could do was rush back to school to get help. Fortunately, I ran into one of the professors at the school gates. Thanks to his intervention, we were able to get the elderly woman to the hospital in time to save her life. The man had knelt before me, not to beg for help, but to thank me. And yet, he had only been on the ground for 2 seconds before we pulled him back up. Somehow, in those 2 seconds, a reporter had captured the moment, twisted the story, and turned it into a nationwide scandal. Emily, we understand your situation, and we believe in your character and dedication to serving the people, my instructor said. But the impact of this article has been terrible. Many readers have sent letters demanding that the school take action against you. The university needs you to provide an explanation as soon as possible. I took a deep breath, staring at the name beneath the headline. Don't worry, Professor. I'll handle this. The next time I saw Ethan and Olivia was when they came to the Capitol to meet Grandpa Carter and finalize the wedding arrangements. I walked straight up to Olivia and slammed the newspaper down in front of her, along with statements from the elderly couple and my professor, clearing my name. Olivia's face stiffened, but she quickly forced a smile. Oh, Emily, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were the person in the photo. The picture was taken by one of my colleagues. I was just following his notes when I wrote the article. I raised an eyebrow. Even strangers managed to figure out who I was from that blurry photo. And yet you, someone who knows me well, want me to believe you had no idea? Do you really think that excuse works? She opened her mouth to say something, but I cut her off. Is this what your newspaper does? Printing falsehoods without verifying the truth first? Do you journalists just sit in your offices making up stories instead of investigating? Her face flushed with anger. Do you even know my credentials? Do you know my standing in the journalism world? And you, a mere student without even a diploma, dare to question me? I let out a cold chuckle and stepped closer, watching the unease flicker across her face. Ethan once told me you were an exceptional woman, someone so outstanding that he forced me to retake my exams just so I could follow your path. But now, I see that you're nothing special after all. Not only have you insulted my honor as a soldier, but you've also disgraced your profession as a journalist. She tried to protest, but I didn't give her a chance. I'm not the naive little girl you could manipulate anymore, I said, my voice steady. Do you even understand the consequences of fabricating a story about a soldier? Do you know how serious of a crime it is to incite hostility between the military and civilians? If you don't want to end up in prison, you'd better write a retraction and issue a public apology. Otherwise, be prepared for what comes next. Olivia's eyes reddened, her lips trembling as she whispered, The news cycle will move on soon. This is just a small issue. It will all blow over in time. If I retract my article now, it will ruin my career. Just then, Ethan, who had remained silent, finally stepped forward, his face dark with displeasure. For a moment, I thought that as a fellow soldier, he would stand by my side, that he would at least acknowledge my anger and support me in clearing my name. But instead, he frowned and said, The article wasn't Olivia's fault. She was misled by a colleague. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? Olivia has worked hard to reach where she is today. Are you really going to destroy her career over something so trivial? I felt my breath hitch, my chest tightening as tears stunned my eyes. I wasn't sure whether I was more angry or disappointed. Maybe both. I clenched my fists and forced my voice to stay steady. And what about me, Ethan? What about my future? I worked so hard to get into the Military Medical University. This isn't just my dream, it's my parents' legacy. And yet, because of a few careless words from her, my reputation has been completely ruined. Does that mean nothing to you? You can't even guarantee your own degree. Ethan stared at me for a long moment before finally speaking again. It would be even better if he just withdrew from the military medical university. If you retake the exams next year, you can still apply to Harvard. The words had barely left his mouth when a loud slap cut through the air. The entire room fell into stunned silence. Even I was momentarily frozen by my own action. Ethan's face bore the clear imprint of my palm, a bright red mark against his skin. He furrowed his brows, staring at me in disbelief, as if he couldn't process what had just happened. It was Olivia who reacted first. She rushed forward, her voice shrill. "Emily, what are you doing? I know you're upset about my marriage to Ethan, and now that you've finally found something to use against me, you must be eager to step on me, right? But Ethan is your elder. The Carter family raised you. How could you treat him like this?" I let out a cold, mocking laugh. Do I owe the Carter family? I already repaid that debt in my past life, 50 years of devotion, only to be cast aside. And let's not forget, my parents saved countless lives on the battlefield, including members of the Carter family. General Carter took me in not out of kindness, but out of gratitude and guilt. If anything, it's your family that owes mine. I turned my gaze back to Ethan. Olivia, you're wrong. Maybe I did love Ethan before, but not anymore. After what he just said, all I feel is disgust, the same way I feel about you. Ethan's eyes flickered slightly. I could see the tension in his expression as I continued, my voice steady. 10 years of love and resentment, let's call it even today. From now on, Ethan, you and I are nothing to each other. The moment I turned to leave, Ethan instinctively grabbed my arm, as if he wanted to say something. But before he could get a word out, I yanked my arm free. I gathered the necessary evidence and, in coordination with the university, submitted an official complaint to the newspaper's leadership. They took the issue seriously, immediately retracting Olivia's article and publishing a week-long apology in the paper. Olivia faced severe disciplinary action. Because of the scandal's widespread damage and its impact on civilian-military relations, her journalist credentials were revoked. When General Carter found out about the incident, he was furious. He firmly opposed Ethan and Olivia's wedding. I later heard that the day I left the Carter family, General Carter had just returned home, only to beat Ethan so severely with a belt that his skin was bruised and torn. And just like that, Ethan and I were completely severed from each other. After 12 months, war broke out. Ethan was critically wounded. With the worsening battle conditions on the front lines, students from the military medical university were deployed to the field hospitals. While we weren't experienced enough to perform major surgeries, we could still assist with basic wound care and bandaging. Rumors spread quickly. I overheard someone say, "I heard General Carter lost a leg in an explosion. They couldn't stop the bleeding when he was brought in." Some of my classmates who knew my history with Ethan hesitated before approaching me. "Emily, do you want to go check on General Carter?" I continued, wrapping a soldier's wound, my expression unreadable. "I don't have time. That's the critical injury ward. We wouldn't be of any use there." In my past life, when I heard Ethan had gone to war, I had been reckless and impulsive. Still a university student at the time, I had rushed to find him without a second thought. On the battlefield, a grenade had exploded between us. My ears had gone deaf from the blast. Ethan, feeling responsible for what had happened, had been forced into marriage with me, under General Carter's pressure. Meanwhile, Olivia, after waiting for him for years without results, had finally given up and left the country with a foreign man. Back then, I had thought that without my interference, without my desperate, foolish love, in this life, Ethan should have been able to be with the one he truly loved, his white moonlight. But after all the twists and turns, this was the ending he was left with. I saw him again 2 months later. By then, his condition had improved significantly, and he had been transferred to a regular hospital room for recovery. However, his left leg had been amputated. He could never serve as a soldier again. This loss hit him hard. For days, he lashed out at everyone. The hospital staff avoided his room whenever possible, terrified of upsetting him. No one dared to leave anything near his bedside, let alone linger for too long. That day, it was finally my turn to care for him. The moment I stepped into the room, Ethan froze. His face was pale, his lips trembling slightly. I acted as if I didn't know him. I went through the standard procedure, changing his bandages, treating his wounds, completing my task with clinical precision. When I was done, I turned to leave without a single word. "Emily," he called my name. I stopped. Through the mask covering my face, only my cold gaze was visible as I turned back to look at him. A bitter chuckle escaped his lips. "You've changed so much." I had changed. After joining the military medical university, following in my parents' footsteps, I had come to truly understand what I wanted, to grasp who I was meant to be. Every day, I faced life and death. I had crawled through the wreckage of war, survived amidst gunfire and bloodshed. I was no longer the little girl who hid behind him, who saw nothing beyond love, who only had eyes for him. I looked at him calmly. "Do you need anything else? I have other patients to tend to." His voice was hoarse, filled with exhaustion. "Emily, do you still refuse to forgive me?" Ethan was wrong, because in the world of adults, forgiveness didn't matter. I had simply grown up. I had come to understand so many things, but there was still something I couldn't figure out. The battlefield in my past life had never been this brutal. What had changed? Where had things gone wrong? The answer came soon enough. The military issued a statement revealing the truth behind this war. Our army had suffered such heavy losses because someone had leaked classified military intelligence, and among the names on the list of traitors was Olivia Jennings, along with several of her colleagues. Everything suddenly made sense. Olivia had used her role as a journalist to get close to the Carter family, to Ethan, to gather military secrets. In my past life, I had constantly been wary of her, always keeping my guard up, making it difficult for her to obtain information from Ethan. That must have caused problems in their plans. And after I returned from the battlefield, Ethan, under immense pressure, had been forced to marry me, cutting off all of Olivia's opportunities, ending her mission prematurely. So she hadn't left the country out of heartbreak. She had fled to avoid being exposed. And yet, the most ridiculous part of it all? Ethan had spent his entire life longing for her, cherishing her memory, even writing a book in her honor. But he had never realized that the greatest betrayal had come from the woman he had held so dearly. When Ethan saw the list of traitors, he was utterly stunned. A guttural, pained scream tore from his throat. He tried to push himself up from the bed, fury burning in his eyes. Even if he had to crawl, he wanted to confront Olivia, to demand answers. But with only one leg left, he collapsed helplessly to the floor. That woman, why? Why would she do this? "Emily, she got the information from me, didn't she? That's why we lost so many soldiers, isn't it? That's why all those men died, isn't it?" The room fell into chaos. Doctors and nurses rushed in, pinning him down as he struggled against them, his screams raw and unhinged. In the end, with his voice shaking, he grabbed onto me. "Tell me, Emily. Tell me I wasn't that much of a fool. How could I have been so blind?" But no amount of tears could undo the past. As I looked at him, at the broken man before me, I suddenly thought of the Ethan from my past life, the one who had written "the love of my life for 50 years" on the back of our old photograph. If he had known the truth then, would he have still spent his entire life mourning the woman who betrayed him? Olivia was arrested. Ethan, for his role in leaking military intelligence, was dishonorably discharged. He was now under investigation, with no future ahead of him. The war raged on for another 6 months before it finally ended. My classmates and I completed our mission at the front lines and returned to school, resuming our studies. No matter what the future held, the time we had spent on the battlefield, the lives we had saved, the hardships we had endured, would shape us forever. On the day we withdrew from the field hospital, in front of everyone, my boyfriend, Ryan Zhao, proposed to me. Ryan and I had met at the military medical university. Ryan and I were more than classmates, we were comrades in arms. We shared the same ideals, the same unwavering commitment to saving lives. We had dedicated our youth, and one day, we would dedicate our very existence to this path. There were no roses, no diamond rings, only a handful of small daisies he had picked from the roadside. But in a place littered with rubble and scorched earth, the fact that he had managed to find even these flowers for a proposal meant everything. In that moment, I saw my parents in him. Ryan knelt on one knee, his voice steady and full of emotion. "Emily, marry me. I will spend my life making you happy." I will stand by your side, walk this road with you until the very end. Tears welled up in my eyes. For some reason, my mind drifted back to my past self, the girl who had once chased after Ethan Carter so desperately. To me back then, Ethan had always been out of reach. No matter how hard I tried, I could only catch glimpses of his back. In his eyes, I had always been the annoying little girl who clung to him, the housekeeper who cooked for him, took care of him, not someone he could see as an equal, as a partner. But now, I no longer had to lower myself to the ground, humbling myself, begging for his affection or his pity. I threw myself into Ryan's arms, crying as the years of sacrifice, bloodshed, and death finally found their conclusion in this perfect, beautiful ending. Cheers erupted throughout the hospital. The overwhelming sound of congratulations filled the air, echoing through the halls. Ethan must have heard it too. From his hospital room, if he looked at the window, he would see me, locked in Ryan's embrace, holding him tightly. That afternoon, I went to change his bandages for the last time. He remained silent throughout, not saying a word even as I finished and gathered my things to leave. But just as I was about to walk out the door, he finally spoke. Congratulations. It was the same word I had once said to him and Olivia all those years ago. Ryan and I decided to get married. Before the wedding, we made a trip to the capital to visit Grandpa Carter. After all, my parents were no longer alive, and he was, at least in name, the one who had taken me in. It was only right that I inform him of my marriage. That evening, after dinner, Grandpa Carter handed me a small, weathered metal box. His hands trembled slightly as he placed it in front of me. "These are the belongings your parents left behind," he said. "You were too young before. I was afraid it would bring you pain, so I held on to them. But now you've grown up, and you're about to start your own family. It's time for you to have them." I opened the box. Inside were photographs of my biological parents, their identification documents, and an old, yellowed newspaper clipping. As I traced the faded ink with my fingers, my heart pounded. Something about the article felt eerily familiar. Following the clues from the news piece, I began investigating. And that was when I uncovered the truth. The journalist responsible for my parents' deaths on the battlefield was Olivia Jennings. Back then, she had only been a fresh graduate, a mere intern at a newspaper agency. In her desperation to prove herself, she had recklessly ventured into the war zone, disregarding all warnings. She had leaped past the safety perimeter, determined to capture the perfect frontline photograph. And because of that, an accident had occurred. At the time, because she was still a student, the military had secretly protected her, covering up her involvement. She had graduated unscathed, her reckless mistake buried. From there, she had risen in the journalism world, wielding her pen like a weapon, crafting her own legacy. When Grandpa Carter learned the truth, his expression darkened with disgust. "No wonder I disliked her from the first moment I met her," he muttered. "There was always something off about her. Ethan was a fool to be blinded by her." The military had finalized its judgment. Ethan, though he had unintentionally leaked classified information, had his battlefield achievements taken into account. His war merits balanced out his crime, sparing him from severe punishment. But his military rank, his title, his entire career, everything was stripped away. For a man like Ethan, this was a fate worse than death. He locked himself away, barely leaving his room, hiding in the shadows like a rat in the sewers. On the day of my wedding to Ryan, he finally emerged. Leaning on a crutch, he stood at a distance, watching. Leaning on a steel cane, he walked toward me step by step and handed me a wedding gift. I recognized it immediately. It was his mother's bracelet, the Carter family heirloom. In my past life, even after 50 years of taking care of him, he had never given it to me. I had always known that it was meant for Olivia. But now, of all times, he was offering it to me. His hair had turned gray, his eyes bloodshot. The once handsome face that had captivated so many had aged decades in just a few years. But when he looked at me, there was still a faint glimmer in his gaze, as if he had finally found some clarity in his chaotic world. I shook my head and gently pushed the bracelet back into his hands. "Mr. Carter, as far as I know, this bracelet is a Carter family heirloom, meant for the future daughter-in-law. Today is my wedding to Ryan. It wouldn't be appropriate for you to give this to me." The light in his eyes dimmed instantly. A bitter, self-deprecating smile replaced it. His lips moved slightly before he murmured, "You're right." Then, before the wedding reception even ended, he left. Not long after, I received news of his suicide. In this life, he never became the revered general who spent his old age reminiscing about his lost love. Instead, he became a man blinded by emotions and deception, a man who betrayed his comrades, whose name became one of shame. He spent his final days drowning in guilt and condemnation, unable to bear the weight of his own mistakes. But I remained steadfast on the path I had chosen. With the person I loved by my side, I would dedicate my life to something far greater than a fleeting, misguided love.